The Minnesota Vikings have been the NFL's most surprising team 3 weeks into the season, with the offense averaging 28.3 points per game, while the defense is only giving up 10 points per game. This team is now 3-0 and looking like one of the best teams in the NFL. So in today's video, I want to talk about the Minnesota Vikings and whether or not they are legitimate Super Bowl contenders. So as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about the Minnesota Vikings. Man, I did not expect to be making this video this early in the season. They are off to an incredible start, and this is a really exciting video for me to make. With that being said, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Vikings roster, what's been working, and maybe what hasn't been working quite yet. We'll of course talk about their 3 victories over the Giants, Niners, and Texans. And then towards the end of the video, we'll start talking a little bit about the future, what's left on their schedule, and what they can do when it comes down to the postseason. But with that all said, if you guys do go on to enjoy today's video, hit the like and subscribe button. Around 97% of you guys who watch my content aren't subscribed, so hit the like and subscribe button. But let's get into the video. So as I mentioned, we are going to begin by talking about the 3 games they've played thus far this season, which have been 3 very impressive victories. We're not going to talk too much in detail about that Giants game. That's a Giants team that just really isn't all that good, so for them to win that one, it wasn't that shocking. And then in week 2, they went up against a Niners team that sure is missing a couple of key players like Christian McCaffrey, but still it's a very damn good San Francisco team, and the Vikings won that game and they dominated a big portion of that game. Now in regards to that game, that was Sam Darnold's best game thus far through the season. Yeah, I know he had 4 touchdowns against the Texans, but he had 268 yards against the Niners. He was absolutely dicing up that defense. And it was a game where Aaron Jones wasn't even really going in that one. Chandler actually had 82 yards on the day for that one, so he was actually the leading rusher. We all know the big play to Justin Jefferson. He has been playing absolutely electric and is easily, in my opinion, the best receiver in the entire NFL. And there's a lot of things that could be said about that game, but I think we should first talk about that Texans game first, so that way we can kind of wrap up everything that's been going on for them through the first 3 weeks. In week 3, they went up against the Texans and obliterated a, in my opinion, fantastic team in the Houston Texans, 34-7. It was not even really a contest. They blew them out pretty early and never really let off their foot. Of course, Aaron Jones had a great game. Justin Jefferson had a good game. All the guys that you would expect to have a great game had a good game. And what's most interesting about these victories isn't the fact that they're beating up on bad teams. They're beating up on good teams in a way that I didn't quite expect from them. Defensively speaking, they are one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. As Brock Purdy said, the scheme is crazy. They're only giving up 10 points per game, which is the 2nd least in the NFL, only giving up 310 yards per game, which is the 13th best in the NFL. And when it comes to giving up touchdowns, they only give up an average of 1.0 per game, which is just ridiculous. You got to give credit to Brian Flores, who I know received a lot of scrutiny for the Tua Tagovailoa situation in the offseason, but thus far through the season, he has been fantastic. Whether it's skimming up a blitz at the right time or tricking the opposing offense with tricky coverage looks and different placements of your safeties, it has been ridiculously awesome watching the film and breaking it down and just being shocked at what this guy has his defense doing on a nightly basis. It's really made the offense's job a whole lot easier. Even though the offense is putting up ridiculous numbers, they could still win these games with a pretty mediocre offense. So if for whatever reason this offense were to slow down at some point throughout the season, it really wouldn't matter too much because this defense is playing completely lights out. And there's a lot of appreciation and a lot of kudos to a lot of players we can give out. Obviously, Jonathan Grenard has 4 sacks. Blake Cashman's been playing very well. Ivan Pace Jr. has been playing really good. The secondary, Byron Murphy, has looked fantastic. The secondary in general has played really well. And this was a defense that I thought was going to be good, but I didn't quite expect to be like a top 5 defense. But thus far through the season, it has been top 5 level. But the thing that I was maybe a tad bit more surprised by was this offense. Obviously, when JJ McCarthy went out with an injury, I feel like a lot of our expectations for this team went down the gutter. And that's simply because Sam Darnold was a starting quarterback. And at least up to this point, Sam Darnold hasn't really done much in the NFL. Obviously, we all know Darnold as the bust for the Jets and the player that was absolutely terrible for the Carolina Panthers. But then he went to San Francisco. It looked like he figured some things out. It looked like he was going to be a consistent backup in the NFL. And then he gets a chance with the Minnesota Vikings to be the backup to JJ McCarthy and, you know, ride the wave there, maybe get a few starts. But as we all know, that did not happen. JJ McCarthy went on IR with a bad injury and Sam Darnold became the starting quarterback. And thus far through the season, Sam Darnold has been unbelievably awesome. On the season, he has has 657 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and a very high QBR of 73.5. And I feel like what's been very impressive about Sam Darnold in this season hasn't necessarily been that he's been playing like a Superman role. That's really not what Minnesota needs him or asks him to do. This is a team that has weapons like Aaron Jones and Justin Jefferson and a good offensive line and of course a great defense. So they really just need Sam Darnold to play conservative football and get the ball to wide open guys. It's not like they're asking Sam Darnold to be Mahomes or Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. Like, they're really not asking him to do that. Instead, all they're asking from him is, as I said, don't turn the ball over and get the ball to your playmakers, and thus far he's done a very good job of doing that. He went up against a Texans defense that I think a lot of us think is arguably top 10. Same thing with that Niners defense. It hasn't looked good this year, but they still have a lot of really good players. And of course, the Giants suck, but you get my point. So it's not like they've been doing this against horrendously bad defenses. They're going up against legitimately good teams, and they're putting work on them and playing fantastic. Oh, and by the way, they are doing this without TJ Hawkinson and Jordan Addison, who are two fantastic players in their own regard. So I'm not sure if this offense is going to be able to keep up the pace. I do feel as if eventually they might come down to earth a tad bit, but I think that's perfectly fine because this defense is playing fantastic football, and you're going to get guys like Addison and TJ Hawkinson who are going to continue to help this offense play even better. Again, I think we have to give all the credit in the world to Kevin O'Connell, the offensive coordinator, and Sam Darnold. They've put together a system and an offense that is complementing this fantastic defense that is playing absolutely lights out. The offensive line looks sharp. They're not putting a bunch of pressure on Sam Darnold, both literally and of course mentally. Whenever you can just be a quarterback and get the ball out to wide open receivers and hand the ball off and expect positive things, that's going to do wonders for your confidence and for your team. And thus far, that's what they've been able to do. So congratulations to Sam Darnold. Shout out to this defense. Kevin O'Connell, you're a freaking genius. But that brings me a bit more to my future talk now, because this is not going to be an easy stretch of games here for the Vikings, but in my opinion, if they can get out of this couple of games here that I think are tricky, their schedule is kind of easy in a sense. So looking at their schedule, this week they have the Green Bay Packers, and in this matchup, I don't think Jordan Love's going to be playing. He may end up playing, but I don't think he will, nor probably should. So you have a matchup here with Malik Willis, which is a pretty winnable matchup. Then you have the Jets, and then a bye week in Detroit. Those are two really tough matchups. I wouldn't be shocked if they won both or lost both. I don't think it quite really matters because those are two really awesome teams. Then after that, you have the Rams, who may or may not be healthy by then. That should be a very fun matchup. But then after that Rams game, your schedule isn't really all that difficult. Yes, these teams are still good teams, but I think the Vikings are arguably better than a whole bunch of these teams. Because after that Rams game, you have the Colts, the Jaguars, the Titans, 3 AFC South teams that have not looked very good this year. Then you have the Bears, a team that maybe by then could get that offense going, but has a bunch of issues on that offense. And I feel like this defense could really give Caleb Williams a bunch of issues. Then you have the Cardinals, the Falcons, the Bears again, the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Lions. Those last 3 games are pretty difficult, but man, if you can go like 2-1 in that stretch there, I mean, we're talking about a season where you could easily get 12 or even maybe a 13-win season if things go well. Again, this defense is not just playing good, they're playing legitimately awesome football right now. They're not playing, above average. They're playing fantastic football. And if we expect this team to sort of take a step down, they're on a bit of a high right now, so if they step down a tad bit, I still feel like this is still a great team. Not to mention, they're going to get healthier and get more options on the offense, and by the bye week, they should be a hopefully fully healthy team. So if that's the case, I mean, man, I look at this schedule and I look at where this team is at, and I think there's a slight chance that they could maybe win their division. Now, I want to set expectations a little bit lower than maybe where some people have them right now. Obviously, I still think Detroit is by far the best team in that division, and I also think the Packers are right there with them. So unfortunately for a team like Minnesota, it's going to be quite difficult to beat out those teams for the division, but I think they have a chance, which is something I didn't think they were going to have going into the season. The Packers are playing good football, the Lions are playing great football, but the Vikings are also playing really good football. They play well defensively, they play well offensively, and they're going to get even better once they get some of their studs back. And I'm telling you guys, once they get past these next 4 weeks, or 5 weeks, I guess, if you include the bye, their schedule gets really easy. And yes, there's some tough, tricky matchups throughout, but this is not a very tough schedule. You don't have a bunch of teams like the Bills or the Chiefs or anything like that. So your toughest opponent this year is the Detroit Lions, which is a team that you face every year. So it's not like anything new. If anything, your 2 toughest challenges heading into the season have already been passed. You beat the Niners, you beat the Texans. Those are 2 of the best teams in the AFC. So now really all you have to do if you're the Vikings is just take care of your your division and win some of these tricky matchups like the Titans and the Bears and the Green Bay Packers and the Seahawks. And if they could do that, which I think is somewhat reasonable, I don't see a world where this team doesn't win over 10 games and maybe makes a legitimate playoff run. Again, I don't want to give you guys false hope or proclaim that this is a Super Bowl caliber team quite yet, but from what I've seen through 3 weeks, this defense looks like it's championship ready and this offense looks like it could potentially get there too. Again, I want a preference. I'm not saying they're going to make it to a championship, but I am saying, and I'm making a proclamation, that I think this team has a very solid chance of at least making the playoffs and potentially making some noise. And if you had told me, 4 weeks ago, hey, this Vikings team without JJ McCarthy is going to be a playoff contender and could potentially make a deep playoff run, I'd probably say you're an idiot and you're just spitting a bunch of bullshit. But here we are. Crazy things are happening. They're playing good football, and it's really fun when you see a team like the Minnesota Vikings that have a lot of fun players, and of course, Sam Darnold, who you want to root for, actually succeed and actually get to a spot where a lot of teams want to be. It also does help this Vikings team that there are several other teams in the NFC that aren't looking as good as we once thought. San Francisco, for example, the Cowboys, for example, hell, even the Bears, for example. Those are all teams that are somewhat disappointing, and this Vikings team is looking really freaking awesome. But you guys let me know in the comment section below, what do you guys think this Vikings team is going to do in 2024? Are they going to win a championship? Are they going to win the division? Will they win 11 games and make a deep playoff run? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed, again, hit the like and subscribe button. And I love you guys. Peace.